When the best interest of others is not in your own, what do you do when what's best for them is not what's best for you? You've got to do what's best for you. A point that we all eventually get to at some point in life. Because in an effort to be kind to everybody else, you can forget to be kind to yourself. In an effort to look out for everybody else, you can forget to look out for yourself. And in an effort to take care of everybody else, you can forget to take care of yourself. But sure, caring for others is undoubtedly very important and truly shows the heart of God in our world. But self-care is just as important. Caring for you is just as important as caring for them. Because if you don't care for yourself, eventually you won't be able to take care of anyone else anyway. There's a reason why when an airplane is preparing for departure, the flight attendants will tell you in their safety instructions that in case of emergency, oxygen mask will drop down from the ceiling. But be sure to put on your mask first before assisting others, because all good care starts with self-care. I mean, even Jesus practiced self-care. In Matthew 14, when he got the news of John the Baptist's death, verses 13 to 14 say, "When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick." So he initially withdrew privately to a solitary place. That's self-care. Then after taking care of himself first, then he took compassion on the crowd that followed him and healed their sick, which was also the same crowd that he fed with the 2 fish and 5 loaves. That's caring for others. But just after miraculously feeding the 5,000, and just before he walked on water, Matthew 14:22 to 23 says, "Immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone." So in between those 2 great miracles, one involving him looking out for the crowd and the other involving him looking out for his disciples, Jesus took time to look out for himself. He took some time to do what was best for him. He took time for self-care. But notice how Jesus' self-care always included prayer. There's a reason why the words prayer and care rhyme, and it's because they go very well together. They go hand in hand. So make sure that your self-care time always involves self-prayer time. But please don't think or let anybody else make you think that self-care is the same as being selfish. Being selfish is being concerned excessively or exclusively with oneself, seeking or concentrating on one's own advantage, pleasure, or well-being without regard for others. Basically, selfishness is only caring about yourself, but self-care is caring for yourself so that you can care for others. And that's a big difference. But when people get a little too used to you always taking care of them, when they get a little too used to you always watching out for them, and when they get a little too used to you always being there for them, They will try to make it seem like your self-care is being selfish. They will try to make you feel bad about taking the time away from them to care for you. But if you don't look out for yourself too, it will always and inevitably lead to fatigue, exhaustion, and burnout. So beware of the one-way, one-sided relationships in your life. Keep an eye out for people in your life that always just take. Look out for people who only make withdrawals from you, but don't deposit anything, don't pour anything back into you. Oh, beware of the manipulative care abuse in your life. And remember that sometimes you must do what's best for you and not feel bad about it either. Because at some point in life, you will definitely get to that crossroad when what's good for them is not what's good for you. When what benefits them does not benefit you. When what's in their best interest is not in your best interest. When what's best for them is not what's best for you. Well, did you know that there are key times in life when you reach that point and you're not supposed to do either? Times when you don't do what's best for them, but you don't do what's best for you either. Times like Jesus had the night of his betrayal. Times like we see in our text. In Matthew 26, after Judas agreed to turn on Jesus for a mere 30 pieces of silver, and after the Last Supper, and after Jesus foretells of Peter's pending denial, Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane. And he was very troubled and very disturbed because he knew that the time was near. So of the 12, he took just Peter, James, and John with him because, like I said in the last message, so there's close and then there's close. So he took just those 3 with him to pray. And verses 38 to 39 say, "Then he said to them, 'My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me.' Going a little farther, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, saying, 'Oh, my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will.'" He prayed that agonizing prayer 3 times that night, so intensely that Luke's account says, "And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground." But it may seem that Jesus' prayer went unanswered that night, because moments later, Judas came to betray him with his infamous and treacherous kiss that sealed Christ's fate. But his prayer was indeed answered that night, specifically the last part. "Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." What was best for the people, what was best for us, was not what was best for Jesus. In fact, far from it, actually. So like any human would do that was facing imminent danger, he prayed for himself to be spared of it, to be removed from it. That's what was best for him. So he pleaded, he cried out, "Oh, my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me." The cup equals the cross. And drinking from that cup of agony, that cup of sorrow, that cup of suffering was what was best for them. And by them, I mean us. By them, I mean everybody else except him. But what was best for him was for the cup, was for the cross to pass from him. Now, if he only wanted to do what was best for us, he would have ended his prayer saying something like, "Nevertheless, Father, I'll do it for them." But he didn't say that, now did he? And if he only wanted to do what was best for himself, well, he wouldn't have even said that last part at all. There would have been no nevertheless. He would have just ended the prayer with, "Let this cup pass from me," which would have caused salvation to pass from us. But he ultimately didn't choose what was best for himself, nor did he choose what was best for us either. We tend to tell the story all wrong when we say he was putting us first. And I know that sounds good and it's technically true, but it's not completely accurate, because Jesus didn't put us first. He put the will of God first. He didn't put us over himself. He put the will of God over himself. And the will of God was for his son to be sacrificed as a ransom for many. Jesus was yielding to God's will, and God's will was to save us. God's will was to redeem us. God's will was to set us free. He was sacrificed because he was willing to sacrifice for the sake of the will of God. And that's what you do when what's best for them is not what's best for you. You don't put them first, and you don't put yourself first either, but you sacrifice and put God first. You sacrifice and do what's best for the Lord, because what's best for the Lord will always be what's best for them and you. You pray and ask, what does the Lord say? What does he want me to do in this situation? What is his will for me in this circumstance? And even if the answer doesn't seem to be what's best for you, be willing to put God first and say, nevertheless, not as they will, not even as I will, but God, as you will. Oh, thank God for the nevertheless of Christ. Though he asked for the cup of the cross to pass from him, oh, thank God that his prayer didn't end there. So like him, oh, that we believers would get more of a nevertheless down deep in our soul and stop giving in to the influence of what others want us to do, and stop giving in to the pressure of what's best for them, but also stop giving in to what we want to do all the time, and stop giving in to what's best for us, and actually just put God's will first for once, saying, nevertheless, I'll go if I have to go by myself, even if there's seemingly nothing in it for me. Saying, nevertheless, God, I don't mind being inconvenienced for you. I don't mind being uncomfortable for you, because Lord, I'm available to you. Saying, nevertheless, I'm okay going out of my way for you, Lord. Nevertheless, whatever it is, whatever it takes, if it's for you, Lord, then God, it's worth it to me, because you've done so much for me. How could I not do for you? I've withdrawn so much from you, Lord. I've cost you your life. How could I not deposit my life, give my life back to you so you can use me? How could I not present myself as a living sacrifice to you and for you as my reasonable service, saying, God, I don't care about what's best for me, because my life is not my own. To you I belong. I give myself to you. So like the old hymn says, thy way, O Lord, not mine. Thy will be done, not mine. Since thou for me did bleed, and now do intercede. Each day I simply plead, thy will be done. Thy will be done. Thy will be done. Incline my heart each day to say, thy will be done. Because that's what you do when what's best for them is not what's best for you.